Hey, my name is Noah Mastery, and this is how I would code a Unity game that is local multiplayer button mashing. First, you open up Unity, and you create a new file. I'll call this Button Masher Tutorial. Make sure it's 2D for this purpose. And then here we are, we have a blank setup, and I like to start by hitting Control S, creating a scene. And the first thing I'm going to do is create this is going to be a sort of like rockets shooting up game. So everyone in the game will be racing to the top, I guess, because the camera will constantly be moving, and so your goal out of the 4 players playing or less is to be the last one surviving. So here I'll go to Assets, Create, Sprites, Triangle, and I'm not going to give it a name. I am going to start creating folders though, just to keep track of everything. Scenes, Sprites, and scripts for now. And that'll go in there. I also want to create a ground, so a place where they can start. And I'll stretch it out to the edge, give it a 2D collider, and there my triangle will be able to rest on it. Okay, our triangle spaceship's going to be green. I'll make it a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. And some things I know I'm going to want on it is because it's going to be flying up in the air. It's going to need a rigid body so that it can have weight, and a box collider so it can interact. Or a collider in general so it can interact. So physics, 2D, rigid body 2D, and then back to physics 2D, add a polygon collider so it matches up with the edges. And you can see, if we hit play, it just drops. Which is good, that's all we needed to do for now. The first thing we're going to do, and I'll add in controller support, but first we'll start with just buttons. We'll go into our scripts, create a script, and I'll call it controls player 1. Now here we have our basic script. We're actually not going to use void start at all, and you can get rid of that. So under update, we'll create an input. So if input.get key down, the A button then get the rigid body component with a lowercase b, sorry. Rigid body 2D, and add force. In this specific situation, we're going to add a new vector 2 with 0 motion forward and 200 up. And then we close that line. And everything looks good. So we'll go back to the file. We'll go to our triangle. We'll rename these ground. And player 1. Pull on the script. And then when I hit A, my triangle jumps. It doesn't have a lot of gravity yet. Minimal. To change that, we can go to its rigid body and give it some more gravity. Now let's see if that works. Okay, so that ends up being too much gravity for the amount that we've added to it. So here, we'll change this to be 600 and we'll try that. So now when I hit play and I press A, I can jump up further and I fall down faster, which is good. And because it's such a fall fast, I think it'll be important to make sure that this collider can go further down. This way, if for any reason the ship is to fall too fast or too far, it'll have some time, the collider will have more time to say that it can't go through. So we'll put that there. That's the ground collider. Now the next important thing is we want to have the camera going at a certain speed so that while the character is going up, the camera, or while the camera is going up, the character can try to follow it and stay in the range. Now for this, we're going to give it its own script. So right click, create, C#, camera script. You double click on it, and here we'll create a couple of variables. A public vector 2 that I'll call velocity, and a public rigid body. (2D) of course, and I'll call this one RB2D. Next I'll add a float, and this will be camera speed, which will determine how fast the camera will go. Then, once the game starts, we'll say RB2D means get the component. And for velocity, we'll say equals new vector 2 0 camera speed. The reason that I created this variable was that if for any reason in the game you want to change the camera speed, like let's say to start you would like every player to have more time to be able to keep up with the camera so they can get into the field, and then as time goes on it can increase, and so therefore it becomes more difficult to keep up with the camera. This is something I can do a lot easier if I've created a variable that says camera speed. Next, we'll want to add the velocity to the camera. So here under the update, we'll do camera speed, how fast the camera's going, equals how fast the camera's already going, plus 1 second, plus 1 times time. So the camera will continually increase by time. The other thing to have is the velocity under an update. And this is something that I guess could be written just under the update, but I read it twice so that I can have a starting one and a later one. This one is the more important one because it constantly updates, so from the start of the game it'll be going at this speed. And then here we'll get the rigid body, and we'll move the position based on the velocity and time. At least as fast as the computer can run. So now we'll attach that to the camera, and we'll make sure we give it a rigid body. I don't think we want to give it any weight because that could drag it down, but we'll see. So we hit play, and the camera's moving up. And you can hit A to stay within the camera limits. And it works just like it's supposed to. Now the next part is we're going to create a timer for the game so that you can see how long you've been playing. Under Game Object, UI, Text, we'll create the new text and we'll put it up at the top. We'll also put the anchor point at the top so that no matter what, it'll stay up there. And we'll call this timer and also name it under the canvas. To make this more visible, you can increase the font size and then change it to overflow on both horizontal and vertical. Then by pressing T, I can adjust these lines so that when I center it, I know that I'm centering it to the whole timer text. And there we go, and that's where the timer is going to stay. So under the camera script, we'll create new variables that talk to us. We'll need a public text that we can call timer text. We'll also need a float, and we'll call it start time to keep track of how long the game's been running. Now one important part is for anything with a timer, we do start time equals time.time, which means at the beginning of the game, this float or number will be the same as the time, which at the beginning of the game is 0, 0. Now in the update, we'll create the explanation for what the text will appear. And here we'll need strings. So string minutes and string seconds. Under minutes, we'll say it's equal to integer t divided by 60. String. And under seconds, it's t percent 60 string. And in quotations, we'll put F2. And then, now that the time is set up, we need to set the text to say what time it is. Dot text equals minutes plus the colon plus seconds. We hit save. And there seems to be an error. Let's see, this says timer text. So let's try it again. The type or namespace text could not be found. Are you missing? Oh. That's because we need using unityengine.ui. That way the game knows we're talking to the text. Now the only thing is, I forgot to say what t was, which is obviously a problem. T is a float, which is time, how much time it's been since start time. And there we go, we get no errors. So real quick, you look, it's t equals how much time it's been minus since the game started. And minutes is equal to the number that's time divided by 60. so just put it in text. And here when we hit play, oh, we didn't assign it. Timer. Hit play. You'll see it's been 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and so on. So now that that's defined, we can work on the next part, getting buttons to show up. So one example would be having letters, so we could create another text box. You could also do images, but in this example we'll just do, actually we'll do images. So we'll create an image under the UI, and this we'll call button press. Now, here are some images of the Xbox controller buttons, and I'm going to drag them into the spreadsheet. And I'll set all of them to point. Now going into the script, we'll need to create a variable for this image so that we can talk to it, and also a place for each of these buttons, along with an integer that says, at random times, switch between them. So we'll start up here. And create a public game object. And this will be the current button that we have to press. And below it, we'll create 4 public sprite sheets. And we'll name these the buttons. And we'll change them from A to B and X and Y. So now on the camera we've got a place for all these. Here's the current button. Here's where A goes, B, X, and Y. Now currently, it doesn't know which one to throw up, so we'll also create an integer, and we'll call it selected button. Now this we want to be random. So here under start, or actually under update, we'll go below here. And grab selected button and say equals random.range 0 being the first one, and 4. So between 0 and 4, it's going to pick a number. And whatever that number is, it will display the button associated with it. Now 0 through 3 would be more appropriate, seeing as there's 4 numbers. 0, 1, 2, and 3 are 4 numbers. However, in my experience, every time there's integers and there's random ranges, it seems to struggle more with showing the last of the integers, and it prefers the first of the integers, so I like to at least add one more so that the last of the integers can be included more frequently. So now that we've created random range, we just have to say what each number means. So we'll say if selected button equals 0. Then we'll grab the current button, which is the game object that we created earlier, and we'll say get the component image and the sprite, and we'll say equals button A. So if the number is 0, then the image will show the button A from the Xbox controller. And this code we can just copy and paste. Create an else, paste, else, paste, else, paste. And so here under the next one we'll say if it equals 1, then show the B button. And if it equals 2, show the X button. And finally, if it equals 3, show the Y button. Now immediately, I already know that this is going to show the buttons a lot of switching. Forgot to end that one. So we'll hit play and you'll see it switches between all of them. And that's not what we want. We want it to switch over a controlled period of time. So next, we'll create a button time. And actually this can be an integer, and we'll set it so that it equals 6. So it'll be 6 seconds between button time. Actually, we'll need both. So we'll say we'll make this one change time. So this will be how long it takes for each button in between the change. And this float, called new button time, will keep track of how much time it's been since the last time a new button has been shown. And with this, it'll be the same thing. New button time equals time.time. And this is where we'll control this variable. So if the amount of time that the button has been shown is greater than 0 seconds plus the variable we created, change time, then what we want the game to do is give us a new button that's between this range. So if it's been more than 0 seconds plus 6, so if it's been more than 6 seconds, change the button. So it starts with A, and we'll let 6 seconds go by. And then it just changes to all of them. Now it does that because we didn't reset the time. So after this amount of time, it continually does that. So what we have to do is grab this earlier statement that says new button time is equal to whatever time it is at that point. Now, it starts as A. After 6 seconds, it goes to B. And after 12 seconds, it goes back to A, randomly choosing it. Now that this is set up, the next important part is to make sure that the player can't press their whatever button whenever they want. So I can press any button during this moment, and it still pushes me forward. So this will need controls for the player 1, and we'll have to make sure that it can talk to this script because it needs to know what button has been chosen. So that means that the selected button needs to be reachable from the script. So int selected button, we'll change that to public and static, which means now from the control player 1 script we can access it. So we have to first call the name of it camera script. So change this to if camera script dot, then we call the variable selected button equals 0 and input get key down A, then add force. So that means as long as it equals A, pressing